Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our Heritage Board meeting, Monday, March the 25th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declaration of conflicts today? Seeing none, can I get an approval of the agenda? Okay, moved by Emil, seconded by Sharon. All those in favor? Wonderful.
Check quorum here. I think. Do I? There was that?
We good?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Do you have quorum?
We have 7 and 4 is 11. We're missing 4 resident members. Missing 4 resident members, and Councillor McKay is 5.
Yeah.
14. So we need, I think, 7. I think we needed 7, not 6.
Wait, 11 members.
Yeah.
No, she has to be here. You got 11, I think it's. Need 6, yeah, that's 50% plus 1. 50% plus 1.
It's 6.5.
What?
It's 6.5.
No, you can't go 6.5. You go 6. It's 50% plus 1.
Does chair count for quorum?
Yeah, oh yeah, just quorum.
Well, if we're 11, we'd have quorum.
Yeah, 50% plus 1.
Didn't we do it with 6 the other day?
I think we're
yourself also. And 6.
we're 6.
I'm a vote no.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I thought we had this sorted before the meeting, so I
It
think,
was,
yep.
Then I got questioned just a second ago, and then I started questioning myself, so if we're good,
We're good.
Last time I think we went with 6.
Okay.
No, 11 members,
11 members.
yeah, 50% is 50% plus 1, so 5 plus 1 is 6.
This just might be a reminder that when the meeting notification comes out from Jason and we're asked to accept or decline, it's really, really important that you decide what you're going to do so that we know. And then if something last minute comes up and then Jason knows as soon as possible, then we maybe won't have to have this. But I don't know, I'm not saying that nobody does answer their meeting notification, but I think it's really important that as soon as you get that request to, check your schedule and so that we seem to have that a lot with this committee, so it'd just be nice.
Madam Chair, just to
Yeah.
contrast, council is mayor and 10 members of council. For quorum, mayor and 5 councillors. That's all you need, 6 people. So
Lovely.
that just clarifies
All
for the
right.
future. So you only need 6, plus yourself.
Wonderful. Yeah, all right. Well, we can continue on. Thanks, Jason, for helping us clarify that.
Sorry, yeah, no, this is the most.
Yes.
we're at, so.
Yeah, I think that it is really important that you see that meeting notification and know that that's how Jason tracks who's coming and who isn't coming.
If we click, I click yes.
Then that means we know you're coming.
Back to you.
Goes
Comes
back
right
to,
back to me, and I have a list I can check at any time. It's just easy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you say yes, and then you find out something comes up, you can come back in and decline it. But if you just send emails to Jason, he gets 100 emails a minute practically, so it's harder for him to track it than if it just goes in through the actual meeting notification. Anywho, thank you for that. We'll move on to the adoption of the minutes from December the 4th. Okay, moved by Councillor Beck. Seconded by his worship. All those in favor? Okay. Any business arising from those minutes? Your worship? Okay, okay. Okay, we can move right on to reports. And we just have the one on the agenda today, and that's 10 Prince Street, PID 336321. And I believe Todd will present the package to us, so.
Sure.
over to you.
Yeah,
for the report.
it's really just an update for the board on a legal opinion that we had concerning the application. The item was discussed in August and September last year, where staff recommended, that Heritage Board recommend to council that a temporary designation be placed on the property. Heritage Board supported the recommendation, which was then supported by council at their meeting in October. A temporary 45-day designation was imposed on the property, thus preventing the building's demolition and allowing future investigation to be undertaken. The temporary designation expired last November. And then following a third-party heritage assessment in November, a proposal for a permanent designation was presented to Heritage Board. The board supported the staff recommendation and made a recommendation to council to designate the property. This recommendation was reviewed by council on November 27th, where it was deferred. An email and a following letter from the owner's legal counsel requested that the designation be denied. The owner's legal counsel alleged an inappropriate consideration of potential new development, procedural failures under the bylaw, and the property not appropriate for designation. Council moved to defer the application to seek a legal opinion on whether there were consequences for the city if they determined the property should be designated, given the owner's objection. On November 28th, the owner's legal counsel forwarded another letter to the Planning and Heritage Department, wherein she suggested that due to procedural errors, the city must cancel the process to designate the property as a heritage resource. Legal counsel for the city has reviewed relevant files, processes, bylaws, and case law, and is of the opinion the property's owner counsel's position on the city's alleged errors were incorrect. With respect to the possible consequences for the city if council was to designate the property as a heritage resource, a review of the law on constructive appropriation concluded the risk to the city to be relatively low. The owner's legal counsel indicates that the process outlined in the bylaw was not followed for three primary reasons. Section 3.3.1 states the Heritage Board shall consider the Heritage Assessment Report and shall make a recommendation to council to consider designating the property as a heritage resource. She states that the use of the word consider means that it was inappropriate for staff and Heritage Board to make a recommendation to designate, as that's beyond the scope of consider. Section 3.3.3 was not followed, as no notice of intention to designate had been posted. Section 3.3.5 and 3.3.8 have not been followed, as the owner was not given the opportunity to provide written objection to the city. The city's legal counsel disagrees with the proposition of the owner's legal counsel and are of the opinion that the position outlined in her correspondence is not consistent with the intent of the bylaw. She's getting ahead of the permanent designation process. With respect to 3.3.1, the use of the word consider does not mean that staff and Heritage Board are not supposed to make a recommendation to council. The owner's legal counsel submits that the recommendation made by staff and Heritage Board was outside the scope of 3.3.1. However, under the procedural bylaw, decisions must be made at the council level after a report and recommendation from the applicable committee or board, which in turn are typically based on recommendations by staff. The city's staff are professional experts in their respective areas and are relied on by committees, boards, and council because of their expertise. Furthermore, the owner's legal counsel's assertion was correct, and council was only to consider designating the property as a heritage resource. If this was not done, then there would be no mechanism to continue the process for permanent designation, which is the posting and publishing of the Notice of Intention to Designate under Section 3.3.3. It's the opinion of the city's legal counsel that consider in this context logically means for council to consider the board, committee, and staff's recommendation. Had council passed the motion to designate the property as a heritage resource at the November meeting, instead of deferring the motion for a legal opinion, then Section 3.3.3 would have been triggered, and a notice of intent to designate would in due course have been published and served in accordance with Section 3.3.3 and 3.3.4, following which written objections could have been received from the owner and other third parties, if applicable. following which Heritage Board would consider the objections along with any further information and would make a recommendation to council to A, designate the heritage resource, B, amend the notice of intention to designate, or C, cancel the intent to designate the heritage resource. The owner's legal counsel assessed the matter as if council's resolution on November 27, 2023 was the final step towards designation of the property as a heritage resource, and therefore the city skipped all the requirements set out in section 3.3.3 to 3.3.7. That's incorrect. Council's November 27, 2023 resolution, which was deferred pending the receipt of a legal opinion, was the commencement of the process to proceed with permanent designation of the property. As a result, the city's legal counsel disagrees with the conclusion of the property owner's legal counsel's correspondence and is of the opinion that the city to date has conducted the review process in substantial compliance with the bylaw. It's possible IRAC or a judge on judicial review may find one or more of the alleged procedural deficiencies cited to have merit, but it's not probable. That's the response back from our legal counsel.
Can I just ask a question? Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Your Worship.
So you asked about business arising from the minutes. So our last minutes for December 4th was 119 Ponnell Street. Property is 2.5-story front end gable, currently vacant. And the building was purchased in 2023. McCabe, second by Beck, that the process to impose a temporary heritage designation on 119 Ponnell Street not be initiated. Would both of these buildings be about the same age?
Actually, I think the one on Paul's older.
Yeah, because I think where you have McKenna's Optical was where Brian Burke, the artist, grew up. And that was an old house because next to that is the home of the Royal Canadian Legion, which is now a basement and different parts. So why do we do it for one that we say no, and then we're saying let's, and look, again, it's just a point of clarification.
I could probably take a stab at that. The property on Ponnell Street is, I believe, in poor condition, both externally and internally. So I think the evaluation of the property was the reason that it wasn't recommended to get a heritage resource, because it was almost not repairable. That's my understanding. Todd, if there's
To
anything.
me, Madam Chair, heritage is heritage.
Okay,
That's again.
we'll move it
Chair?
over to our heritage officer. Yes.
I think there was a scoring done on that, if I recall. I think, and it was well below. It did not meet the threshold for consideration, is my recollection of that conversation. When we were looking at that property, so they were looking at, this one had a original score of 63, got reassessed at 68. That original property was, I think, low 50s, if memory serves me correctly. So I think that was an additional reason for not proceeding with the designation. That's my recollection of that situation.
But I think that part of the scoring is, the reason it was scored so low is because it was in such unrepairable state. Is that correct, Todd?
The condition is part of the scoring, as is the age. It's not the only thing. Details that are existing are part of the scoring. People who have lived there, if it was designed by a particular architect. There's a whole range of criteria that we go through. That's why we have that discussion. And you're right, although that property would be older, it didn't rate as high as the one on Prince Street. And again, the rating can't be 100% all the time, but that's why it came to the committee, and that was the committee's decision.
But Madam Chair, scoring is very subjective. So, they could have done a score on the provincial assembly and said, hey, why are we going to put $140 million into this building? Like, why don't we just build a new legislative assembly? There's a lot of arguments about what's old, what's older. I just know this building in 119, And I know people who, and organizations that have used it, like it was used in the last provincial election by 2 or 3 Liberal candidates. So it was usable then, that was only last year. Yeah, this argument, and Donna, again, you're the expert when it comes to looking at heritage designation. It's a pretty sensitive area when you're saying yay to one and nay to another. And as for 10 Prince, look, I agree with the recommendation. It's an entry point into the city of Charlottetown. We have 4 entry points, that being the cruise ships, the airport, the Confederation Bridge, and coming from east, from Caribou and Wood Island. So I know the entry points, so, but again, I don't know if that argument can be used as an appeal, but I'm sure that whoever's doing the legal work for 10 Prince is definitely listening to today's meeting.
And so when staff made a recommendation to not put designate the heritage resource on Pownell Street, that didn't move on to council, that just stopped here? Because the committee accepted staff's recommendation, is that why?
Yeah, it would have gone on to council even if council had wanted to designate it. If council had not accepted staff's recommendation, it would have gone forward to council. But because nobody was supporting the recommendation to move forward, it stopped here.
Right, so council never had the opportunity to support or not support.
That's correct.
It stopped here.
Right.
Whereas this one will have to go on to council, whatever happens at this stage. So if, right today, you are recommending to initiate the, on the inventory, so you're still recommending that this get a designation for a heritage resource?
Today is really just a discussion. This committee's already made a recommendation to council to do that, and that's sitting
Right.
with council.
Yeah. So I guess so now procedurally, this goes back to that area where we kind of stopped the process at section 3.3, whatever, and then we go back to that 3.3.3 through to 3.3.7, isn't it? And now we follow those steps?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I want to make sure I understand correctly. So, quite a while back, 4 or 5 months ago, I guess, we voted and accepted a temporary designation of a heritage property. So after that, that went to council. Does it have to come back here for us to designate it a historic property?
Yeah, so what happened was, it came here, staff's recommendation was to put the heritage resource designation onto this property. So it moved on to council. Council decided to defer it until we got a legal opinion, because there was some concerns of whether or not, because we've never ever designated a property as a heritage resource before, just without it being prompted first. This was just us doing it, on our own, whereas normally an applicant,
Yeah.
an owner of a property will apply and they'll want this. This property owner actually doesn't want this designation. So we put the process on hold at council, deferred it from 3.3.3 to 3.3.7 to get a legal opinion. The legal opinion has come back saying that there was no error in staff or Heritage Board. So now we're just going back to where we left off. And today, it was just giving us the information that the legal opinion came back that, in fact, staff did not err, that they did follow process, as did this committee. So now it goes back to council, to where we left off, to see whether or not council wants to proceed with the heritage designation, the resource. And if we do, then we have to do all those steps. Dear Lord, did I get it right?
That sounds good.
What did I miss?
I understood.
So we
Yeah.
don't need to do anything today.
Today, we're just kind of hanging out. Yeah, no.
Our sandwich.
So, does anyone else have any questions? So eventually, it will be coming back here again, will it not?
Yes, it will.
Right. So now it's going back to council for council to get the legal opinion. And then council will decide from there. And if council decides they want to continue on with the process, then you're going to put the notices up, all that other stuff. Then it eventually will come back here with another staff recommendation?
It will only come back here if we receive any letters or any objections. If everybody in Charlottetown is supportive, it just goes straight back to
Yeah.
council.
So could I just ask, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Conclusion, page 19. The Planning and Heritage Department staff recommend that the Heritage Board recommend to council that 10 Prince Street, PID number 336321, be designated as a heritage resource. So we don't vote on that?
We already have.
And you voted, but that was for temporary.
No, we already did for this as well.
Oh, we did. That was my
Yes.
question.
That was December.
I wasn't at that meeting. Okay,
Yeah,
that's why I thought
that
we
was
only had done
December.
temporary.
Yep, and we did that. And so then it went off to council, and that's when council had, for a bit of a sober second thought, and thought, well, wait a minute, we don't want to vote in favor of this permanent heritage designation until we make sure, with a legal opinion, that we're actually following the process correctly, because the administration has never done this before to a property without it being first sought after by the actual property owner. So this is all, we're kind of opening up Pandora's box here. This is something we've never done
So,
before.
to correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, so we deferred it back in December. We didn't vote on it. We deferred it until we got the legal opinion.
Council,
Yeah.
council deferred it for the legal opinion, so
okay.
therefore, today's meeting was for information only, no action required, because we already took our action. Now it will go back to council. Council now will decide, after they see the legal opinion, whether or not they want to proceed with 3.3.3 through to 3.3.7.
Right, right. So the recommendation,
It'll only come back here if, after all that's done, we get letters from folks in Charlottetown that don't want staff to continue
Yeah.
on with this.
but the deferred the recommendation from Heritage Board. Correct? The deferral that we had in December to get more information, it deferred the recommendation. So we're recommending today as a board, or you just wait, the recommendations already went through, so when it goes to council, this is what will go to council, the recommendation. Like, I think we're complicating this, guys.
Great question, Your Worship.
I remember the debate, Donna, that we deferred it because I think, and I forget who moved the deferral, but it was deferred, and now we get the legal opinion. So when this goes back on the second Tuesday in April, we will be taking that deferral off the floor with the legal opinion. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. Remember that this was discussed in closed with council as well before coming here. So they are already aware of the legal opinion. So this now is to make all of what's enclosed in the legal opinion public as well, because it's not yet public. Also, when we go to council on April 9th, I think it is, the deferral will come off the table because the recommendation will then go back to have the property designated as a heritage resource
With this recommendation?
with that recommendation.
But council still has to vote
They
to
do, Madam
accept or
Chair.
deny staff and Heritage Board's recommendation.
They can
with
either
all of the
approve,
new
review,
information.
refuse, or cancel.
Right, okay. So today, you're just basically sharing the information with this board, but the board has already done their work on this
They've
file.
already done their work.
Okay,
And Madam Chair, not only shared it with this Heritage Board, but it's live streamed, so the legal opinion now is an open textbook for everyone to look at and call Todd or yourself to get a copy of that legal opinion.
No,
Oh.
not yet.
no,
No.
we're not allowed, legal opinions
Oh.
are not allowed to be shared. That's
Oh.
why the summary of the legal opinion
Is
is in
what-
the
Yeah,
report.
so the summary is public information.
That's public
Okay,
information, but the
okay,
actual legal opinion itself,
Okay,
yeah.
so we have to take the deferral off the floor. Correct, CAO Eleanor? We have to take the deferral off the floor on it's the second Tuesday in April and make the recommendation.
To have.
Yes,
So to his worship's comment, this did actually confuse things, like why, like, normally you would never be back here. So really, this is confusing, actually. Not only is it confusing because we've never done this before, that we put a heritage designation on a property without the property owner wanting it. So not only are we doing something new that way, now we're even back here when we probably never needed to be back here. Holy lifting. Okay. Go ahead, Counselor Beck.
I guess if there's an upside, we now have a blueprint for future
Absolutely, yes.
situations like this.
Yeah, yeah. It was nice to see everyone.
no, but I think, Madam Chair, the criterion is there that this could lead into other properties that our Heritage Department points out to say that we want to save this property and we want to designate it as a heritage property, correct? Now, could I ask, from Donna's point of view or Todd's, how many other jurisdictions have done this? Where they've taken, like, have they done it in, has this process taken place in Ottawa, Quebec City, Montreal? Like, I don't think we're the first to break ground on it.
Well, actually, the first 300-ish properties that we designated, most of those would have been against the property owner's wishes in around 1979, 1980. So we are a leader in doing it against property owners' wishes. Summerside, I understand, does not, but many other municipalities do. It's very common.
There you are.
Thank you. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just wanted to jump in to offer a little bit of clarity. During that last meeting with council, where staff briefed council on the legal opinion, we had committed at that time to come back to Heritage and then back to council once the Heritage Committee had been brought up to speed. So that's why we're back here today.
Great, thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, so this will be going back to our April 9th council meeting. It may or may not be back here, depending on council's decision and depending on the public feedback from this process. Is that correct? Okay, great. Anything else on this before we move on to an introduction of new business? Okay.
We need a motion for.
Apparently, we don't need a motion. No.
FYI.
Is FYI, we don't need a motion. Okay, so if we have no introduction of new business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
By his worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. Thank you, everybody.
What's that?